You are 17 the first time you understand what your father does for a living. Not in the vague, comfortable way you have always understood it. The armored cars, the men with earpieces at the school gate, the houses that multiply like children, but in the precise, irreversible way that changes how a person sees everything that came before. You are sitting at the kitchen table, doing calculus homework, when your father walks in with blood on his shirt cuff, pours himself 2 fingers of mezcal without washing his hands first, and looks at you in a way that is neither apology nor confession. It is something older than both. It is inheritance. You close your textbook. You do not open it again. He does not explain, and you do not ask. That silence is its own education, and over the next 3 years, you receive it completely. You watch how the men in this house defer to him, not from affection, not even from fear, but from a calculation so deeply embedded it has become instinct. You watch how your mother moves through rooms, always slightly behind him, always positioned to absorb whatever comes next. You decide early that you will not live inside anyone else's shadow, and you decide it with the particular ferocity of someone who already knows the shadow is enormous. Your father is diagnosed with stage 3 pancreatic cancer 2 months before your 20th birthday. He tells you in the garden, not your brothers, not his lieutenants, you. He sits across from you with his hands flat on the table and tells you that he has perhaps 8 months, perhaps 14, and that after a great deal of thought, there is only one person he trusts to hold what he has built. You feel the weight of it arrive before the words finish. You do not cry. He would not respect the crying. What you do is ask him one question. How much time do we have to prepare? He almost smiles. That is when you know he has made the right choice, even if you haven't decided yet whether you have. The next 11 months are unlike anything a business school could manufacture. You shadow every operation, distribution routes that move across 4 states, the network of officials whose mortgages your father quietly owns, the processing facilities where the accountants work in shifts like surgeons. You learn who is loyal out of ideology and who is loyal out of debt, because those are 2 entirely different liabilities. You learn that the most dangerous men in the organization are not the ones who carry guns, but the ones who carry information, and you begin, quietly and without announcement, to make yourself indispensable to them. You give them access to things your father never offered. In return, you get clarity on margins, on vulnerabilities, on which of the senior men will test you the moment your father stops breathing. He dies on a Tuesday. You are in the room. You hold his hand because he cannot hold yours anymore. And when the last breath goes out of him, you sit with it for exactly 4 minutes before you stand up and make the first call. Not to family. To Reyes, who controls the northern corridor and has been positioning himself for 6 months. You tell him the news in the same flat tone you would use to report weather. You tell him you are assuming full operational authority as of that moment. You tell him you expect to meet with his team by the end of the week and that postponement will be interpreted as a declaration. There is a long pause on the line. Then Reyes says he will have his people call yours. You have won the first hour. The first year is a campaign fought on a dozen simultaneous fronts. You formalize the leadership transition through the only mechanisms that carry weight in this world: demonstration and consequence. When one of your father's oldest associates attempts to redirect a shipment and pocket the differential, you find out within 72 hours, and your response is visible enough that no one needs it explained. You do not enjoy it. That is the distinction you hold on to, because you understand that the moment you begin to enjoy it, you will begin to make the wrong decisions, the ones driven by power rather than the ones driven by necessity. Your father enjoyed it at the end. You watched what that cost him. You build 2 things simultaneously, and the tension between them defines every decision you make for the next 4 years. On one side, you rationalize and consolidate, fewer moving parts, tighter logistics, less exposure. You cut alliances that generate too much risk relative to revenue. You let certain operations go dormant rather than fight over them. Your margins improve by 31% in 18 months. The men who doubted you begin to understand that doubt was expensive. On the other side, you cultivate leverage with extraordinary patience. Politicians, prosecutors, military officers, you do not buy them crudely. You solve their problems. A congressman's son with a debt, a general's daughter in the wrong situation. You collect these not as emergencies, but as architecture. By the time you are 26, you have more structural protection than your father ever possessed. And you have built it without a single operation that could be directly connected to you on paper. But paper is not the problem. The problem is the DEA task force that has been mapping your organization for 14 months and the informant inside your distribution network whose identity you have narrowed to one of four people. You run the calculation methodically, the way your father taught you by example, and the way the 11 months of preparation made instinct. You cannot move against all four without destroying the trust that holds the network together. You cannot wait while they continue to report. So you do something elegant and uncomfortable. You feed each of the four a different piece of false information, and you wait to see which piece surfaces in the intelligence reports your contact inside the task force provides. It takes 6 weeks. When the answer comes back, it is someone you have known since childhood, someone whose family your father protected. You sit with that for 3 days before you act, and in those 3 days, you understand that leadership is not the exercise of power. It is the willingness to make decisions that cost you something real. There are things you do not let yourself think about during daylight hours. The girl who used to study calculus at the kitchen table. Whether she would recognize this version of you, or whether recognition is even the right measure. You have not been outside the country without a security detail in 4 years. You have not had a relationship that was not compromised by what you are. The two people closest to you are a lawyer who knows you are guilty and a bodyguard who has watched you make decisions that cannot be undone. And both of them stay because the alternative is worse, and you try not to examine the exact mechanics of that loyalty too carefully. The task force is getting closer. You know this, not because your contact tells you he has gone quiet in a way that means he has been discovered or flipped, but because of the patterns, the surveillance vehicles in different configurations, the pressure applied to peripheral figures who have no intelligence value except as signals. They are trying to create movement. They want you to react in a way that generates evidence. You understand the strategy because you would use it yourself. So you do the thing that is hardest, which is nothing. You hold the organization completely still. You move nothing, authorize nothing, communicate through channels so indirect that even you lose the thread half the time. You wait. Waiting is its own form of violence. You feel it in the way the senior men begin to look at you, not with doubt exactly, but with the particular alertness of people who are calculating whether stillness is strength or paralysis. You cannot tell them what you know. Telling them would confirm that you have an inside source, and that source is the only thing keeping you 3 steps ahead. So you hold the information alone, the way you have learned to hold most things that matter, and you stay in the room, and you make yourself the calmest presence in every space you occupy, and you wait for the pressure to show you where it intends to break. Your father built this with his hands and his brutality and a charisma that could fill a room like heat. You have built it with precision and silence and a willingness to absorb costs he never could. Whether that is better, you do not know. Whether it matters, you are no longer certain. What you know is that it is yours, and that no one is coming to take it easily, and that the girl at the calculus table made a choice the night she closed the textbook, even if she did not know it yet. You are still making it. Every day, you are still making it.